Moin and welcome to the links! In today's video I have another very special project to show you. Some of you might know that I'm a big fan of the Divas stop motion series from Motion. The story itself, the characters, the backgrounds, all the accessories, the voices. I imagine it being so much work and I highly respect Natalie for that. So when I had the opportunity to collab with her, well, I guess you can imagine my reaction. The funny thing is that she told me about making a wolf and I was just thinking about trying my hands on a wolf character a few days back, so I was even more excited. If you want to know about the connection between our two characters, wait till the end to hear their story. But first, let's start with the doll. First, I wanted to make a male and very young grey wolf, but while thinking about the character, I came up with a pretty nice idea for a female white wolf, so I went with that. As for the body, I took this light grey one with black gloves and this Venus head because it was not as round as a Claudine or a Laguna head. The character I had in mind should be very self-confident to the point of being a little full of herself. First thing to do was to dunk her head in pure acetone until it got very big and squishy. I then let it dry for a few days actually, so all the acetone can evaporate and leaves the head shrunken and hard. In the meantime, I worked on the body. Since I liked the idea of her wearing black gloves, I first removed the arms and set them aside until the end. If you're familiar with Motion's Divas universe, you know that the characters grow more animal features when they get older. My character is supposed to be a young adult, so she has lots of animal features like bent legs. I first cut them to be able to bend them. After that, I drilled some holes inside the pieces to be able to add some wire. Like that, they should stay bent and stable enough for me to add epoxy sculpt. But before that, I added some hot glue to fill the gaps and secure the wire even more. Since the original doll had human legs, they were of course shaped like that. So I also sanded down a bit of the bulkiness from the lower legs to fit the animal leg aesthetic a little more. And after all these steps, it was finally time for my beloved epoxy. Even though I tried my best to smooth it all out with water, I had to sand it again after drying. But to be fair, it's already quite old and I probably should get a new pack of epoxy. But well, as long as it works. I mean, it is stable and all, but just a little more difficult to work with, that's all. Once it's dry, there is no difference. To have a base for the paint, I covered the body in a few layers of white gesso. The actual white paint should be added later with my airbrush, once the head will be back on the body. Speaking of the head, it was now dry and ready to be worked with. During the drying process happened something strange though, and now she has this pit on the top of her head? That never happened before, but I just work around it. In true Motion fashion, the first thing to do was of course to cut the human ears. Well, in this case they were not human to begin with, but you know what I mean. I also reduced her nose to make space for her snout. And since I already had the knife in hands, let's continue with her eyes. All of my dolls get inserted eyes and she should have been no exception. But I still wanted to try something different and gave her some half-closed eyes. The sculpt was actually really great to do this because of the strong factory mold. After a while I was happy with the result and also removed the back of the head to have access to the eye holes later. To avoid any cracking, I then placed the head back on the body before modding it. Oh well, I tried to. And then the neck pack broke. It's the worst nightmare of everyone working with these dolls, right? After a short mental breakdown, I then decided to build my own neck pack. But to do that, I of course had to remove the rest of the factory one, which was easier said than done. A little fighting helped and I could insert the wires. You can see how I did it. To secure the wire in the neck, I used some 2-part epoxy glue. The bigger wire, that will go into the head later, has to remain glueless to move freely. I let that dry for a day before adding the head carefully. Once that was done, I bent the wire inside the head around the vinyl thing for a secure hold. I cut them a little short, but they still work fine and the head is still completely movable. And now finally, we can work on the modifications on the head. I already inserted some wire to have a base for the wolf ears and only needed to add epoxy sculpt. Again, I smoothed it out as best as I could with water, even though it wasn't that important, because the ears would get some fur later on. It's common in the Divas universe that the bottom lip remains human, so I only modified the nose and upper mouth. I will admit that it would have been nice if I added some fangs, but I somehow had that saved in my head for cats. Let's just pretend she has very small fangs that are not visible when her mouth is closed. When the clay was dry, I sprayed the whole doll with white acrylic paints with my airbrush and sealed the color with a good layer of Liquitex matte varnish. I let that dry and sprayed the doll with Mr. Super Clear Sealant to have a good base for the pastels to hold on to. Being an albino wolf, she would not have a black snout, but a light flesh one instead. Also, I wanted her to have quite a lot of makeup. Since she has strong features, it was quite easy to place the eyebrows and all, but I still have to admit that I had so much trouble getting her right. Maybe because I'm more used to BJD heads now that are a lot bigger, or I was just struggling with the white. For example, I wanted her to have red eyeshadow, but decided against it again and tried to erase it. Didn't work out perfectly, which ended up in a really beautiful look. So kind of a lucky accident. I sealed everything with MSC again and jumped in with my gouache colors to paint the nose, eyeliner and some hairs. But no matter how much I worked on the nose, she kinda looked like an opossum and I went kinda crazy over that. Finally I gave in and just started sculpting again. Don't be like me, especially when you just painted on gouache paints that can be reactivated with water. Her red lipstick kinda went everywhere, making her look like she just drank some blood or something. Anyway, after drying I sanded the parts a little as you can see here and painted everything with white acrylic paint. But I paid a lot of attention to not paint over her eyes because I liked them so much. Again, don't be like me. It would have been a much cleaner finish when I had to start it over completely, especially when working with white. See the blush on her cheeks? That's what I mean. It looks kinda patchy, but I was willing to pay the price for keeping her eyes. She still gave me quite some struggles though. I midway painted her nose black to see if that looks better. I wasn't sure, so I just let it be for a while. In the meantime, I gave her some white lower lashes. To make them visible, I first blushed on very dark eyeshadow and even drew some black lashes. Putting the whites on top made them clearly visible even though her skin was white already. And here we are back at the nose. Removing the black paint with water gave it this nice black border, which was fine, so I didn't mind. Can you tell that I had no idea what I was doing? But I guess that's part of being an artist. Trying new techniques you never tried before to achieve a certain look. It clearly slows down the process since you don't get used to something, but for me personally that makes it more fun. After all, these are one-of-a-kind dolls, so painting them all the same would be kinda contradictory, right? But enough of me rambling, we have a finished face! Now the part I was most excited about, adding the lashes. Why was I excited? Because I had white ones! No black ones that I painted white, but actual white lashes, and I was eager to try them. I mean, look at them! They are luxurious! I will keep them this long for sure, since it really adds to her character. Since dogs and wolves do have very small and subtle whiskers as well, I couldn't resist gluing some on her snout too. Since they're white and super thin, they're barely visible, which is perfect. I made these eyes off camera for her. I'm still working a lot on my techniques when it comes to eye making, since there is so much one can mess up. Someday I will be able to make the perfect eyes, my friends. Someday. To make your ears fluffy, I did not use flock this time, but this fur fabric. It of course needed trimming after gluing it to the ears, but I think it looks way better than my attempts on flocking. Don't know what I do wrong, but I really never liked the result, so I was pretty happy that I had this fur fabric now. It's quite long fur though, so I had to cut most of it, but it looked fluffy and cute in the end. A little pastel blushing on the inside of the ears and the job was done. For her hair, I prepared some yarn wefts like I usually do. I could have used the fur fabric too, but I was too afraid it won't look good, so I stuck to my trusted yarn. White acrylic yarn is always different from other colors, as far as my experience goes. Some brands are twisted together so tightly that I have nearly no chance of pulling out the fibers. This one was good to work with and even ended up in longer fibers than usual. Sadly, I removed the label back then, so I don't remember what brand this is. I just hope I will find it again in one of my shopping lists. The not perfectly fitting head cap and the lump inside it could easily be covered with the wefts, so don't worry if your doll head looks ugly without hair. I just glued very thin wefts very close to each other, so the imperfections were no longer visible in the end. Here you can see the result. I did not plan to give her such long hair, but once it's on a doll's head, I feel too bad to cut it, so most of my dolls end up with long hair. But I tied some strands together at the back to not have the most boring hairstyle. I also liked how that framed her face. But we're not done with the fur now. She needed a tail. I looked up some reference pictures of wolves to get a good length and started with some twisted wires, cotton wool and a bandage tape. Wolf tails seem to be a little more chubby and short in comparison to cat tails, so I wanted to stick to that. And again, my wonderful fur fabric came in super handy. When cutting these kinds of fabrics, make sure to carefully cut the fabric only, not the fur fibers. Then pull it apart for a clean look. I then just sewed it around the tail, finished sides in, and flipped everything afterwards. The tail needed a little trimming of course, but I was very happy with the result. Now we only needed to glue that into the doll's body. The paint had closed the hole a little bit, but that was easy to repair. I even widened the hole a little more before adding strong glue to attach the tail. Now she really looks like a wolf, right? Our wolf girl is supposed to be an actress, so I wanted her to have a normal everyday outfit and one for the red carpet. I do have a lot of old Monster High clothes and shoes, so instead of sewing something, I chose some clothes for her from that lot. For the red carpet outfit though, I bought a pattern from DG Requiem on Etsy to sew her a glamorous red dress. First I attached the collar, hemmed all the edges and sewed the back pieces to the front. But I also wanted a little more, so I cut a black elastic band and gathered this black net fabric to sew on the elastic. For her shoes, I had these Monster High ones left that I painted in a fitting red with a black rose. After that, I sealed the colors with Liquitex High Gloss Varnish for some extra fanciness. And here are all the pieces together. Don't forget that she's wearing some black gloves, so all the pieces together add up to a nice outfit. For her casual everyday outfit, I chose these pieces and I think they do fit her perfectly too. It's quite an act of balance, but with enough patience she can even stand on her own. I love it when dolls don't need a stand. But I bet you're eagerly waiting for a story, right? Fear not, my little lynxes, she has one. Scarlet Hudson was born deep in the night during a thunderstorm. The moment she entered this world, she was treated like something special. Not only because of her being an albino wolf, but also because her parents were told not to be able to have children. Growing up in belief she was a miracle, she soon started to look down on others, which ended up in losing friends on a regular basis. But she never really cared, since there were always enough people wanting to befriend her because of her unique appearance. Next to school, her parents took her to castings for commercials or model jobs, so she already entered the show business at an early age. It was perfect for her. She got all the attention she wanted and felt home the moment a camera pointed at her. A life of beauty, power, and money was what she always wanted, even though it led to loneliness. At least, that's what she thought. Scarlet never had a problem with superficial acquaintances, as long as she got enough attention from the other person. But one day, she met Boris. He was a grey wolf and so completely different from everyone before. He always was friendly and nice, but he never idolized her. He treated her like a normal person. It made her furious, but also intrigued. Her new goal was clear. She wanted to seduce him, but the longer their friendship went, the more she realized her true feelings for him. When they started dating, she felt happy. It was an experience she never had before. There was no longer the need of being the center of attention, idolized, envied by everyone around. For Boris, she was enough. Slowly, she backed out of the business, living her life with her boyfriend in happiness, until one day changed her life completely again. It was an offer from a famous TV show that wanted her as the main actress in the new upcoming series. A once-in-a-lifetime offer, and the opportunity she had always dreamed of. Triggering her old instincts, she dumped Boris and moved abroad to take the chance. Nowadays, Scarlet is a famous actress, known by everyone. She never spoke to Boris again since the day she left him. As far as she knows, he is now married and has a child. And even though she has everything she ever wanted, she doesn't feel happy. If she could go back in time, she sure would have stayed with him. The love of her life. That was Scarlet's little story. I hope you liked it as well as her handsome ex-boyfriend Boris. Please check out Dalmotion's channel for his video. Natalie was so sweet to Photoshop our dolls in one picture, and I love how they look together. So I for sure jump right to Boris' video now to see how he came to life. Thank you again, Natalie, for this wonderful collab. It was such fun to work with you and think about the relationship of our wolves. And of course, a big thank you to you, my little lynxes, for all your amazing support. I love this community so much, and I'm so happy to be able to share my dolls and their stories with you. Have a wonderful day. See you soon. Tschüss!